I'm your host, Jason Tardik, and welcome to Trading Secrets. We talk all things money on this podcast, and we're teaching all the stuff we just weren't taught in the classroom. Nothing supports this show more than liking, commenting, and of course, subscribing. Joan, thank you for being on this special Golden Bachelorette segment of Trading Secrets. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored you want to talk to me.
Absolutely. I saw the first episode, and I got to tell you, Joan, I think you are the depiction of elegance and class. And I feel like in Bachelor Nation, it is such a beautiful thing and something we are all so excited about. So, first episode was amazing, and I want to get right into that. I saw a quote that you said, "My goal was to leave in a committed relationship. I didn't want to go through all this and be at the same place I was when I came to the mansion." So, in episode one, we heard a lot about tragic stories of loss and divorce and so much hardship. My question to you is, when you're meeting these guys in such a short period of time, what questions are you asking to see if they've properly healed, if they've turned the page and are ready for this new chapter?
Wow, what a good question. I'm not sure what properly healed means. So I think it's like a journey and you may never get to the end of it. Like every day is a surprise or something different hits you in a way. So I'm not sure if I was looking for healed. I was looking for healed enough to want to move on.
Gotcha.
And I think, that we shared a lot of the same stories, that we've had loss. Maybe like part of that healing process could be with somebody else. So you don't have to be completely healed coming into this. You can share that journey a little bit. You just have to be far enough along that you want a different life, that you don't want to spend the rest of your life mourning, that you want to spend the rest of your life like I did, with somebody else. I loved being married, and I missed that feeling of having my best friend and having the person I'm planning my future with. So as long as they were at that point in their process, then they were good. And so I talked about, how you ended up here, and tell me about your relationship with your family, and, how hard it is to be away. I just need to find out if they had the similar values, because you have to assume that if they're on the show, they have moved along at least enough in their own minds that they are ready to date.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's perfectly said. You don't have to be fully healed. You just have to be in a healthy place to
Yep.
take that next step.
Yeah.
One of the things you had just said is if they're on the show. Now, every season, one thing we ask ourselves, if they're on the show, are they there for the right reasons? This is the first Golden Bachelorette ever. It's the first group of men at this age.
Yeah.
During your course of filming, did you ever have to ask yourself, or did you have any red flags that some of those people weren't there for the right reasons?
Maybe if I look back at the journey after having gone through it, there may be some, not red flags, maybe some pink flags that I could have seen. But in general, like 99% of my interactions were completely genuine and heartfelt, and the guys were vulnerable and they spoke from their heart. And I feel like I really got to know the real man. It's hard to determine what somebody's objective is when they're in the space that we were in. I asked them really hard questions, and people told their stories. Nobody made up stuff. Nobody hid things. Everybody was really vulnerable. So I think 99% of the interactions were very genuine.
I think that was one of the most refreshing things. Every season, first episode, you're kind of looking for the drama, who's the troublemaker, and it was just
Yeah.
refreshing story after refreshing story. And then just when you think you got enough, Jack comes in singing My Way, and you're like, okay, this is unbelievable. All right.
Jack was so good. Plus, he could cook. He was awesome. And he had the biggest personality, which, by the way, in that room, a lot of personality. You're going to get to know the guys so much better than you have in at least the Golden Bachelor season, because the shows are a little longer, and you get to hear these great stories, and these guys have some personality.
I can't wait. And I'm sure they have stories with how far they've come. A
Oh, yeah.
question I'm going to ask you. I asked Jen when she was on the show, and it was
Okay.
before the finale aired. We talked about first impressions, because this is also a business and finance podcast, and the power
Yeah,
of first
I know.
impressions, dating or right in just the work world. And she said that 3 the four of her final four didn't make great first impressions. So I just had that interview. I got to ask you, how does that compare to your final four, what Jen had said about her experience?
Okay, let me think about that. Okay, so my final four. So, um, all my final four were guys that I liked up front. So they were real, they made good first impressions, but not necessarily because they did anything epic or, in fact, one of them didn't make a great first impression, and I liked him just because he was really nervous. So
Yeah.
there was something like even if he didn't like do his speech like he had planned, or he, felt uncomfortable, you could tell he was really, really nervous. That made me like him, like maybe even more. So I think as far as first impressions, I had a lot of empathy for the guys coming in because I knew how incredibly nervous I was when I was in the limo. So I kind of gave them all passes on their first impressions. I didn't want to make that like a big part of it because I'm not sure if you're true, you're like true awesome self when you're coming out of that limo under that like high stress situation.
Yeah, I like that perspective too, because it's like I just remember when I came out, I don't remember anything. Like you black out under that
Isn't
stress.
it
It's
amazing?
it's crazy, but it's
I
also good.
know.
It's good and refreshing to hear that four for four. Maybe it's not about what they did, maybe it's not about what they said, but from the first impression of how they made you feel, you went four for four with your final four, a little
I
bit
think I
different
did.
than
Yeah,
Jen's. We
yeah, yeah.
love that.
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
right, cool. Well, another question I got for you. We already talked about Jen. Let's go down history, right? History is a meaning of learning what happened yesterday to maybe prevent or look different as to what tomorrow could look like. When you saw what happened with the first season of The Golden Bachelor with Gary and Teresa, did you have any second thoughts about maybe pursuing the lead role?
I didn't, but I kind of look at like why um their relationship ended, and it was because of basically geography, because I did witness them falling in love. And so I saw that the journey really worked, that Gary and Teresa ended up in a really good place at the end of the season. And I think it fell apart, at least in my opinion, was because of the geography. No one could figure out how to move. And I have a completely different view about that issue in, forming a relationship. And like, it's my opinion is I'm never moving. Or at least no time soon. I have like multi-generational responsibilities. And I have a mom and a mother-in-law who are still alive. I have kids and I have grandchildren, and I don't want to leave them. And I say responsibility, but they're also the joy in my life. And I don't want to be without them. I don't want to not be able to see my grandchildren several times a week. I also have a lot of friends, and I've spent a lot of years building a really meaningful and rich life. And I want to be with somebody who is the exact same thing. I want somebody who loves their family, who has lots of friends, who has a really cool life. And I don't have to live in the same town as they have. Like our lives can be running parallel, and I can go visit him and he can come visit me, and we can spend lots of time together. And it doesn't have to require somebody giving up something so big as their life that they spent a lot of time building. And maybe
Yeah.
one day, and hopefully one day, you'll merge and you'll be able to live together full time. But that shouldn't be a requirement at this age. There's just too many factors, and you shouldn't like living in the same place is going to require somebody to give up too much.
Yeah, I think success of relationships is predicated on the idea of having these proactive conversations, the tough
Yep.
ones. And I think with
Mhm.
Teresa and Gary, we saw a lot of those conversations came after the fact, or at least we heard those after the fact. And
Yeah.
on your teaser towards the end of the episode, we saw a whole lot of action there. But one thing we didn't see was this answer. And I'm wondering, with the people you're dating, did you set that boundary from the get-go? Did you say, hey, we can move in our own lanes, we could do our own thing, but I'm not moving? Or was that a
Yep.
conversation that came up later in the journey?
I had it before the journey. I actually did some press and I answered that question. And I also had that conversation as like I started forming connections with people. I made sure all of them knew that. Like I don't
Yeah.
like say you don't have to accept a rose from me at the rose ceremony. If you don't think we're a good match, it's like a two-way street. You need to know like what my parameters are. And if that's a red flag for you, you should not accept a rose. And I made that really clear that this was two-way street. I might not be the right person for you, just like you might not be the right person for me, but let's just get it all in the open. And like that's the whole thing about this journey. Every conversation you have is important. You have to learn things about the people because you are potentially picking a life partner. You
Mhm.
can't have stupid conversations about like what kind of dog do you like? Like, I mean, maybe that's important. It is kind of. So you can't you
Yeah.
you need to have important conversations, and you can't, and every conversation has to be important because you don't have that many opportunities. So
Right.
you have to say things like, you don't have to come with me, I'm not coming to live with you either.
I love it. It's getting down to the deep foundation because it's the foundation that will drive the success. It's perfectly said. You said red flags, and a lot of times on these different interviews and podcasts, you'll talk about red flags or beige flags or green flags you're looking
Yeah.
for in a relationship. We don't talk about that. We talk about though financial red flags. So, are there any financial red flags for you, or money habits, or anything in the categorization of finance and money that you see in a significant other that you're like, nope, not for me?
Not for me. So my husband and I worked really, really, really hard to create a really nice life, and we did. But it required a lot of work and a lot of hours and a lot of time away from the family. John spent a lot, many, many, many hours at work, and we ended up being really financially secure. And so I wanted somebody that was in the same place as me because
Mhm.
let's face it, like doing cool things in life often isn't free. It often costs money.
Yeah.
And so I wanted a partner that had the same resources that I had. So, those conversations, I could either just kind of tell based on maybe their professions and things like that. And also, when you get behind closed doors, when you get to fantasy suites, you do talk that. Those are important conversations. It sounds so like not lovey to have those conversations, but God, this is real life. Like you can talk about love and feelings and about all those things, but you also need to talk practical. And that was a
Yeah.
practical conversation I did have with people.
I think a lot of leads in the future can learn from you from that. Because with my book, Talk Money to Me, I think I interviewed over 10 leads, 30 some fantasy suites, and not one of them talked about money and career in the fantasy suite. So it sounds like that's something you tackled. You
Yeah.
mentioned, and I know you and your husband had, you said in your intro package, you guys met at 20 and 21. You
Yeah.
then build this wealth together. One conversation that I see and I have with almost every guest that comes on here, but also we've seen in the former Golden Bachelor, is the
Mhm.
concept of prenups. And I'm curious if you have a take for, against, or just any opinion on prenups in general as you go through another chapter for yourself when it comes to love and also protecting your assets.
Good question. I think I believe in a prenup, not because I don't think that um, a marriage is going to last. Like it's not a statement about a marriage.
Mhm.
But I will always, always, always be in a mode to protect my children. And
Yeah.
I want my assets to go to my kids. And they lost their father. They've already had enough loss. I want to make sure that um, they have what's left of what I have. And so it's all about not a statement about marriage, but about my protecting my children.
Brilliant. I absolutely love it. One thing I wanted to ask was we heard that you said you've only been in love with one person, but more than one now. That was on the teaser. We also heard a little, there's something I thought I heard, I love you, Mark. Good friends with Kelsey and
Yeah.
Joey. So my one quick question is, we've seen it on many seasons. Did you fall in love with more than one person?
I honestly fell in love with a lot of people. To be truly honest with you, I formed connections with most of these men. There's a thing about older men when they're vulnerable and you just want to take care of them. And, you know, I fell in love quickly. I formed like amazing friendships, and I feel like we left there knowing each other like so deeply. So I fell in love with probably 24 men, to be honest. I really
I
did. They were just such great men. And it was such a privilege that I got to be with them and to like, they shared their lives with me and I shared my back. Like, you go through stuff with these guys. It's crazy being on the show, the amount of stuff that you revealed to like total strangers really soon, but you form these really strong bonds because you do that. So, I fell in love a lot. I left the show exactly where I think I need to be. Life has a way of unfolding the way it's supposed to, and I believe that this really did.
It's beautiful. We are all rooting for you. The last thing
Thank
I
you.
got for you, Joan, is on trading secrets. Everyone comes and gives a trading secret. So it's something they can't learn from a professor or textbook. I'd like to keep your trading secret to your experience that you just finished. So, what would be your biggest trading secret from the experience as the first ever Golden Bachelorette? What can you leave us with?
Oh gosh, that's such a hard one. So as a person that kind of came into this whole Bachelor Nation, starting with the Golden Bachelor, and then even as the Golden Bachelorette, I was afraid. And so I feel like a statement about fear, like, and one of my favorite sayings is fortune favors the bold.
Mhm.
And so go out and do something bold. Do something that scares you, because I feel like every time I've done something that I've been scared about, I've grown so much as a person. So I'd say fortune favors the bold. Do something that scares you.
Do something that scares you. I'm sure you were
Mhm.
scared at times in this journey. But
Yeah.
Joan, thank you so much for coming on. I'll tell you what, my mom and all her friends, majority of them are happily married, but they are going to be sitting around with popcorn. They've already talking about how hot all the guys are. They
Oh
can't
God, they
wait
are.
to they can't wait to watch it. And I wish you all the best. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and wanting to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Living with my wife be like, she started working as an Amazon product reviewer. Every week, she gets these exciting packages from Amazon